Alright peeps, we are back in ESBC. The developers had a Q&A on their Discord channel just a week ago. They received a good amount of questions, and props to everyone who participated. There were some really good questions asked, questions that I didn't even think about. And we're going to get into them because it shines a light on different areas of the game. Things that we could probably expect, things that are being talked about. So let's break it down. Now this Q&A was about an hour long. I picked some of the things that I felt were pretty interesting out of this whole Q&A session. Now, there was a question around recreating different fighter styles. And if you think back to, say, Fight Night Champion, they had a handful of styles, so this was a good question. Fight Night Champion had Brawler, Unconventional, Counter Puncher, Boxer Puncher, Inside Fighter. Those are some examples, but if you went deeper into Fight Night's character creator, they also had styles. So they had like the high rise, old school, balanced, you had the upright style, the good old textbook, the hyper, got the cocky style up in there, peekaboo, power, wild. One of my favorites, the mummy. I mean, the list goes on. And the question was around these styles and how are they going to create all of these different styles? You know, boxing, fighters have different styles. They don't all fight the same. And the devs stated they actually call these styles movesets. So it sounds like with these movesets, they're able to complete a full moveset per fighter around roughly every 2 weeks, it sounds like. They did state they may not prioritize every fighter to have their own moveset, but they will prioritize the marquee fighters. They also mentioned that some fighters will have their own signature punch, which that's pretty cool too. So example, they had an example for Joe Frazier. They said he has his own mannerism, so he has his own moveset. You could probably see this for marquee fighters like Roy Jones, Terrence Crawford, Lomachenko, which is great because you know Joe Frazier, when you see him in the ring, my man is bouncing, bobbing, weaving, ducking under body shots. He moves a certain way in the ring. So it's great they're paying a close attention to the detail, the way each fighter moves and their mannerisms. And they want to get their hands on each and every one of these fighters. They want to get them in that mocap studio ASAP. They even talked about Roy Jones. They kind of joked about and said Florida would be a great trip. The hardest thing is them getting a hold of these fighters and getting them in that mocap studio so they can capture those movements. They also stated, and I love that they said this, they said they don't want to imitate anyone who was still alive. They said that they want to go directly to the best source for that material. They don't even want anyone to come in and mimic them. And they just reconfirmed kind of what we already knew as well. Every animation is motion captured. They want to get those fighters in the studio. The fighters who are no longer with us, they will bring someone to imitate them, to kind of mimic those movements. Another good question was brought up about an angle system. There's been some videos floating around, and shout out to Boxing Fanatico. He did a really good breakdown where he kind of uncovered this in the video. It was kind of blurred out, but these fighters are showing angles. The developers said that the angle system is still very early, but they did mention, and we saw this, the pivot hooks, the check hooks. So kind of the stepping back, giving angles and throwing a hook. They also mentioned that they're still trying to figure out what exactly they want to do with this angle system. So still very early in development, but this could be a system that could be game breaking. They talked about the ref system, so the referees. First of all, the referee does exist. The referee will be in the game. Right now they said they have some ideas on how the ref will actually interact with the fighters. And they mentioned things like eye damage. So if the eye is damaged or cut, or there's any type of bad cut or injury to the fighter, the ref may jump in and call the fight off, which that would be great. And this also goes into the clinching system, which was another question they were asking about clinches. They stated that the ref will be involved. So those fighters who like to hug all day, the ref you may get penalized. We don't know, but it sounds like the ref will interact with those players in the clinch. Now, does this mean the ref will penalize you for excessive holding? Or will he just calmly break it up and just continue on? We don't know those details, but he will be interacting with fighters in the clinch. That's the plan. There was another question about how are you going to capture Lomachenko's footwork? And I had to laugh at this one because that makes sense. Like, Loma's footwork, it's crazy. A man could bounce all over the ring. His footwork is top notch. I was like, well, yeah, I didn't think of that. That's really good. The developers responded. They said, we can capture everything. So the mocap, it can capture everything. They will take that raw data and they will produce some incredible footwork with that. So yes, they can capture Lomachenko's footwork, Manny Pacquiao, whoever's footwork is really good. I mean, they're not going to have trouble keeping up with that footwork. Now, hair physics was brought up because we haven't really seen much hair in ESBC. This is building up though. This is still much a work in progress. And they stated that, the developer stated it's definitely a work in progress, especially with the female fighters. They did state that they do have a system in place that they seem to be satisfied with, but it sounds like they're definitely tweaking this hair and the physics. There was a question around the blocking system, and this was one of probably the best question. The guy that posed this question seemed very passionate about boxing video games, and he mentioned Fight Night, he mentioned I think some other games that he's played. And as soon as he said that too, I started thinking, how can they revolutionize the blocking system in a boxing game? And he hit it right on the head, because when you think of blocking, we'll take Fight Night for instance, it's always blocking up and blocking down. I mean, that's it. And he was concerned because he's like, everybody's worried about these other things, but the blocking system, he was really passionate. He felt like that was really important. And I agree with him. And the devs, they had a really good response. They said that they have a 4 manual blocking system. Now, they could not go into detail on this. This is something that's still under wraps, but they said that they're going to go in detail with this 4 blocking system and the blocking system in general. They're going to have a whole video going into detail about the control scheme in ESBC. Ooh, I cannot wait to see this one. Crossplay was brought up. Somebody posed a question about crossplay with custom fighters. Their answer was that they're considering it. And I'm not sure, but I felt like the guy who was posing this question, I think he meant when he's talking about crossplay, PlayStation players play with Xbox players, play against PC players, something similar to that. At least that's what my definition in my head with crossplay means. So I'm not sure if the devs picked up on that, but basically their response was that essentially you'll be able to move your custom player to another platform like Xbox. Take them off of Xbox, put them on PS5 or the PC or something like that. But this is something that they're still investigating and kind of looking into. This definitely isn't something that's a top priority, but that was their response on that. There was another really good question, and this one was, will the fighters be in their prime? And the response was, some fighters will have multiple models. That's great. So are we going to see a Roy Jones in his prime and then an older version of Roy Jones? Different weight classes maybe? I mean, who knows? But they also stated that some fighters will just be in their primes. They said multiple aesthetics are possible. So that is awesome to hear. That's great. I mean, you have the Pretty Boy Floyd and then you have the Money Mayweather. I would love to see, that's a prime example. Give me the Pretty Boy Floyd model and the Money Mayweather model. As a matter of fact, who would win? Pretty Boy Floyd or Money Mayweather? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious on people's responses on this. The question was, will there be one-hitter quitters in the game? Basically, one punch to knock somebody out. Now, they could not confirm this. They did not confirm or deny, but they responded and said, to watch the upcoming control scheme video, this may reveal something. So we need to keep our eyes peeled for this upcoming control scheme video. Are you going to tell me that we might be able to place a punch in a certain area, depending on maybe who the fighter is, and it'll be a critical hit? And maybe this fighter will not recover from it. That is going to be the question. I cannot wait to hear more about this. We also got a little update as far as the console release. We're talking about Xbox, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5. And when you get on the Discord, one of the developers is Aimbot, and he says, "Hello all, thanks for your immense support for ESBC. We greatly appreciate it. In terms of console support, Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 dev kits were delivered last year. Early builds on some of them were phenomenal and just as good as high-end PC builds. We have dedicated account managers from the hardware manufacturers in contact with us and are in talks now about console variants." So things are definitely moving, they're in motion. I mean, you could already tell their main goal is to hit early access, to get this game out on Steam. I'm glad we got somewhat of an update because it's been a while since we heard anything about the console development. And that's it, peeps, for your ESBC weekly wrap up. That's all the news and information I was able to pick up. Let us know what you think in the comments. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back with more ESBC news. Alright, peeps, you know what it is. Until next time, Gia.